HaTeshuva here, Rav Kook's book on Tshuva. And we mentioned yesterday that Rav Kook broke up Tshuva into three categories: natural Tshuva, faith-based Tshuva, return to Hashem, and intellectual Tshuva, an intellectual return to Hashem. And Rav Kook goes on to say one more thing, which leads us to say that the way that we interpreted it yesterday was incorrect. It's a way to interpret it, but not the way Rav Kook meant it. I have a feeling that the shiur tonight might make some people happy and some other people not so happy. Rav Kook says, but Tshuva HaTivit, inside of the natural Tshuva, yesh shnei chalakim, there are two parts. Tshuva Tivit, a natural Tshuva, gufanit, a natural physical Tshuva. Maybe you can put that on the other table. Let's move all the machzorim off this table. That way we don't get them dirty or anything like that.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Tshuva tivit gufanit, you have a natural physical tshuva. V'tshuva tivit nafshit, and you have a natural spiritual tshuva. What does that mean? A natural physical tshuva and a natural spiritual tshuva.
One is action, based on deeds.
Physical.
Like there's some things you can't, for example, make up to another person unless you give them money back for something that was stolen, or you have to say something to correct a wrong you've done. And spiritual is more of an internal tikkun, fixing internally.
Very nice. So you're right. There are, but that would be the difference perhaps between just natural tshuva in general and intellectual or faith-based tshuva. Here Rav Kook is saying that when he says natural tshuva, he means something very different than any other person means when they talk about tshuva. Rav Kook, you must know, never gave sources for the things that he said.
Ever?
And very rarely.
Yeah, I noticed in the books
That got him in a lot of trouble. And who else did this? Do you know?
What was the prelude to the Shulchan Aruch?
The Rambam.
The Rambam, right?
The Rambam.
And there's something in the Ben Ish Chai also.
Also, but the Ben Ish Chai is less of there's a work we learn more, but it's not a novel work, meaning he didn't shatter the world when he wrote the Ben Ish Chai. The Rambam made the world crazy when he wrote the Rambam. And not only did he drive the world crazy, he didn't bother. He kind of showed up and said, I'm going to do something no one else has done. I'm not even going to prove to you that I'm right.
Did anyone ever, after him, catalog his sources?
Yes. Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, wrote a commentary on the Rambam called the Kesef Mishnah Torah, right, that's the name of the Rambam's book. Kesef Mishnah means the silver of the Mishnah. And Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, wrote an entire commentary on the Rambam, giving sources for everything he said. And that's why the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam are so interconnected. Because Rabbi Yosef Karo started his duty before he wrote the Shulchan Aruch to justify what the Rambam writes in his book. And to the point where the Chazon Ish writes that the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam are pretty much the same thing. It's not accurate. There are some differences between the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, but it's pretty accurate. We Sfaradim, I was telling my wife this 2 nights ago when we were learning. I was telling my wife this two nights ago when we were learning that as much as we Sfaradim follow the halachot of Rabbi Yosef Karo, I'm not convinced that we are so connected to the personality of Rabbi Yosef Karo as much as we're connected to the personality of the Rambam. The Rambam is kind of our philosopher, our spiritual leader, and Rabbi Yosef Karo is kind of our legal leader. When it comes to halachot, who we follow is Rabbi Yosef Karo. Rav Kook is actually suggesting something based on the writings of the Rambam. The Rambam writes in the laws of De'ot. One second, can I just... So, the Rambam writes in the laws of De'ot the following, in the 4th chapter. I'm reading you from the Rambam. The Rambam says, Ho'il v'heyot haguf bari v'shalem. When the body is healthy and the body is functioning, midarchei Hashem hu. This is the way of Hashem, that the body should be functioning properly. Shari efshar shavinu yida midyat haboreh v'choleh. It's impossible for a person to understand Hashem and be sick. You always find but someone who's sick, someone who's ill, someone who's not well, has a very hard time learning or praying or even thinking straight. It's the biggest distraction from connecting to Hashem. is physical ailment. Lefichach, and therefore says the Rambam, because of that, Zev, don't look at me, tzarich la'achik adam atzmo midvarim ha'me'abdin et haguf. Man must distance himself from things which damage his body. U'la'anhig atzmo b'dvarim ha'mevarin v'hamachlimim. And rather he must train himself to eat and do things that are healthy and that cause the body to be strong. The Rambam says it's a spiritual demand for a person to not be physically ill. In this context, Rav Kook is telling you the physical tshuva is not a tshuva that has to do with your religiosity, so to speak, but rather on a physical level, are you living your life the way that Hashem wanted life to be lived? Now this is a radical idea on tshuva. I don't know that you will find any other book in the world written on returning to Hashem that starts off with the baseline is to live a healthy life.
That's Orot HaTeshuva. It's the way of nature.
Sure, it's the way of nature, but
No one lives in the Jewish world.
but you don't find this generally as a prerequisite to tshuva. To become imagine something, to become observant, you must be healthy.
It makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like if you take care of what was basically a gift the body Hashem gave you, and treat it with respect and care, it is a form of tshuva.
The thing is, you can use that excuse not to become spiritual.
Well, the other extreme.
Yeah.
Right.
I
I don't know that Rav Kook is saying. It's like when we say derech eretz kadmalat Torah. You first have to be a mensch before you learn Torah. I don't know that it means that until you become a mensch, you're not allowed to, observe the Torah. Rather, in order of priorities, this is a priority. You're right. It could be used that extreme. You know who tried to use that extreme? David Ben Gurion gave a famous speech in the Knesset. Derech Eretz, he claimed. Derech Eretz meant working the land. Novel interpretation. Derech Eretz means working the land. Kadma Torah is more important than learning Torah. And he decided that in Israel, as long as someone is involved in agriculture, they shouldn't need to study Torah.
But of course, Rav Kook said that building the land of Israel is a very high mitzvah, and the Jews doing that are building it. So he brings
Rav Kook said worse than that. What got Rav Kook attacked in the ultra-Orthodox camp was a famous writing in his book Orot, where Rav Kook writes that those youth who play sports, some say he's referring to those who are training in the Jewish underground. Those youth who play sports are just as holy as King David who wrote Psalms. And you can imagine what the reaction to that was. Like, what are you?
It's Kabbalistic.
Yeah, and then exactly. So it was a big problem. But this is where Rav Kook's coming from. And it's true, the Gemara in Bava Kama says, "En adam reshai lechabel b'atzmo." A man is not allowed to hurt himself, to damage himself. This is one of the reasons why certain things that people do to their bodies are not allowed. They're not allowed because they're considered damaging to a person.
Like tattoos.
It could be. You'd have to discuss that damage or not. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going on record. I know that in the Torah, we have many of our forefathers and mothers with all kinds of piercings and this and that and the next thing. Obviously, this was something that was very accepted once upon a time in culture, in society. I'm just going to make sure for a second. I'm not convinced. Listen, what can I do with a lady? A lady, she has a yetzer hara that I don't understand. I don't understand why, in order to leave a house, you have to stand for 7 hours in front of a mirror. I don't know. I don't understand. But it's precisely because I don't understand that I won't judge. But to damage your body physically in order to look good, so to speak, it's a big question. Are you allowed to do such a thing? The big question this comes up with is plastic surgery. Is a Jew allowed to undergo plastic surgery to look better, so to speak? Especially in situations where the person's putting themselves at risk. And there are a lot of arguments back and forth. It's not so simple that your body is yours to do with whatever you want. Someone who commits suicide, he feels like he's taking his life in his own hands. But it's not yours to take in your own hands. Your body is just on loan to you. It's not yours. When I first discovered what this means, one of my students came back from the army in Israel. He joined the army. And they knock into your head that for the next 3 years of your life, you are property of the Israeli government. I don't know how, it's a crazy thing. But for example, if you were to go get a job, you're not allowed to get a job. You can't. Even if you're 3 days off a week, you can't, because you are not allowed to use the body that is now owned by the Israeli government to do things that they don't endorse. It's a crazy thing. Well, it is a very socialist thing, right? So clearly why I struggle with that concept. But in spiritual terms, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you a body. And it's not yours to do with whatever you wish. And there's a story also in Masechet Brachot. It says there was a righteous man who was praying on the side of the road. And you know the story. Most of you heard this. And a king or a duke or a knight or whoever he was pulled him up and said, "Hey, I'm asking you a question." And he wouldn't talk to him because he was in the middle of his prayers. And after he finished his prayer, he said, "Yes, what do you want?" And this nobleman said, "You crazy man. Who said that you should be praying and putting your life in danger? You can't do one on account of the other one." And Rav Kook, listen to the wording of Rav Kook now that you know the background. Hagufanit sovevet et kol ha'averot neged chukei hateva. This part of natural tshuva, which is a natural physical tshuva, the sin that causes that is one that goes against the order of nature. Things that are done against the natural needs of a person's body. Hamusar, ethics, v'hatorah, and also Torah, but on a physical level. Hamekusharim chukei hateva, all those aspects which are connected to the laws of nature. Shesof kol hanhaga ra'ahu lahavi machalot u'machuvim, because any mistake in this department will lead to illnesses and to suffering, and again that goes back around to therefore a lack of connection to Hashem. V'harbe sovel mizeh hadam ha'prati. It says that not only does the individual suffer from this, also v'haklali, also who else suffers from it? The population as a whole. Why does the population as a whole suffer from this? What happens when one person gets sick? It spreads. He gets other people sick.
Even with, of course, with obesity, they found that a study that people who hang around people who are vastly overweight will become overweight themselves.
Sure, I once lived with a guy.
Can you do me a favor, take a picture
Yeah,
of
sure.
those pages?
I once lived with a guy who he was a roommate of mine. He had severe eating problems. Okay, let's do those two. And it was a really hard thing being his roommate. You know, you'd go out to a restaurant, let's say, for lunch or dinner. And the guy would order 4 or 5 main dishes. I cannot tell you what it means. When you go to a restaurant and you get, you get yourself a soup or a salad and something to eat. This guy would get 4 or 5 appetizers and then 4 or 5 main dishes. No, not at all. But when you would go out and eat with him, you felt it was under a lot of pressure to maybe I'm being cheap with myself. Maybe I really need to get 3 main dishes or 5 shawarmas and lafas or who knows what I need to order.
Makes you feel sick just to think about it.
I once went to a restaurant with some people, and one guy who was overweight ordered 2 complete meals and ate them both. And that, it was I could barely finish one, and I was
but this idea is that even if a person gets, even now, the worst thing a person can do when they're sick is not tell people that they're sick. I as a rabbi, my immune system isn't the best that I would love it to be, but people are always shaking my hands and hugging me and kissing me, and I forgive you if you don't want to shake my hand or give me a hug because you have a cold or a flu or strep throat or whatever it is. I forgive you. You don't have to say hello to me. Just walk by me, please.
There's another factor, though, and susceptibility is only there where when a person takes good care of themselves, they're much less
susceptible to that. Right. That was my prequel to what I said. But a person has to know that when a person is not well, they also cause other people to not be well. And then Rav Kook says, "V'acharei haberur shemitbarer etzlo hadavar." When a person stops and thinks in his mind, what is it that is causing me to be not well? Shehu ba'atzmo b'anhagato hara'a Hashem hu b'chol oto dildul ha'chaim shebanu. He says he'll come to the realization that he himself and he alone is responsible for all of the evil and the lack of quality of life, says Rav Kook, that will come to him because of this. It's his fault. I'll never forget, there was once a funeral in Yerushalayim that Rav Peretz refused to go to. It was a certain Torah scholar, and they invited him to come speak, and he wouldn't go. And it turned out that it was someone who, it was a rabbi, yeah, but he doubled the speed limit on the freeway. Doubled. And got killed in a car accident. I mean, there's a reason why there's a speed limit.
He doubled it. What do you mean? He drove twice as fast?
Twice as fast as he should have been going.
Like he made a decree that you could drive.
No. He drove, and he got killed.
That's a little hard.
And so our parents said, I'm not going. I said, why should I go eulogize someone who killed himself? And then what happened was that the Vaya, some of the people who went, we're not talking here about a suicide of a person who, Hashem Yishmor, we shall never know, reached a place where he lost his mind and hurt himself. I'm about a person here who was considered a respectable, straightforward person who knew what he was doing, but was reckless in the way he lived his life. And if parents said that at the funeral, everyone said, "Oh Hashem, why did you take him so soon? Hashem." And when we came back and told our parents that, our parents told us, how come, it says there's a pasuk in Tanakh, it says that man does evil and then blames it on God. So why is Hashem wrong for everything that we do to ourselves? Not everything is his fault.
I'd love to see a cartoon with the bubbles. He was going to twice the speed limit, that's why he died. Nothing to do with me.
And then Rav Kook continues, he's not done. Harei hu sam lev letaken et hamatzav. He says a normal person will stop and he'll realize, I need to fix the situation. Lashuv lechukei hachaim, to return to the laws of life. Lishmot chukei hateva, to observe the rules of nature. Hamusar, and of ethics, v'hatorah, of the Torah. Leman yashuv v'yichyeh v'yashuv elav hachaim b'chol ra'ananutam, so that he can go back to living a life that is full of ra'ananut. What is ra'anan? It's like rejuvenation, a life where he rejuvenates himself. And then Rav Kook uses a word, it's an ancient Hebrew word, you're going to help me out with it. It says, ha-medicina. Medicine. Medicine, oseket bazeh omnam harbe. It says medicine does take up a lot of its effort to try to heal human bodies. אבל לא נשתכללה כפי הנראה עדיין לגמרי עבודה גדולה זו. But even medicine in its advanced stage, Rav Kook says, and this was then, imagine now, he said medicine has not reached the point where it truly understands everything that's wrong. ולא נמצא עדיין הפתרון הנכון לכל שאלות התשובה הגופנית. And it does not have remedies or solutions for all of the problems that can come to man. You can think of diseases that exist in the world that we don't know how to cure or even prevent.
Well, in Chinese medicine, the highest medicine is called yang shang, or nourishing of life, preventing disease and extending longevity, living the fullest life.
Are there diseases according to that discipline that can not be prevented?
Well, I was just studying a book this morning. It was saying that patients who have pus, which means like putrid fluids embedded in the body, only 1 out of 10 will survive. I think that they're talking about like cancer and things.
Well, diseases like cancer, leprosy, all kinds of I don't know what
putrid byproducts building up.
Are those diseases that can be prevented?
Yes. According
to this discipline?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But it's environmental as well.
It's not just up to the person.
Right.
Okay.
It's
עד כמה שיש בגבולות החיים להחזיר לאדם את כל האבוד ממנו מצד החטאים מהרסי הגוף וכוחותיו, says Rav Kook, the medicine cannot do to the body what man could do by doing tshuva of the body. And Rav Kook, actually you can understand from here a few things. Some of the students of Rav Kook understand this teaching to say that there are actual physical ailments that come from spiritual misdoings. A person can do an avera and receive a physical consequence because of that.
It's all right.
Yeah.
So, very good. And they understand from there that, we say in the Gemara, who says that a doctor is allowed to heal? If God decided a person should be sick, who gave the doctor permission to heal? Well, the rabbi says, "Rafo yirapeh, mikan shnitan reshut larofeh lerapot." From here we learn that the doctor has permission to heal. On a philosophical level, is a doctor allowed to heal an ailment that has been caused by a spiritual avera?
You'd have to be at a very high level to know.
Imagine he's a very high doctor.
You mean should the doctor try?
Can he? Is he
allowed?
It is not. It's not like he got sick from someone sitting next to him at shul. He got sick because he did something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, with somebody at Sarat, you need a spiritual remedy. You need the branch, the hyssop.
Right. Well, Rav Kook is not out. Rav Kook is not ruling out that there are spiritual remedies that heal ailments as well. Just the general questions: are we allowed to heal such things? The students of Rav Kook say yes.
But is it really healing then?
Rav Kook is pointing out that it cannot be truly healed just by
Right.
medicine alone.
Well, you see a lot of things where, in modern medicine, a person, if he stops taking his high blood pressure medication, as soon as he stops, the blood pressure will go up.
Right.
There's no inherent change.
It's not a healing; it's a controlling.
Yeah, which is sometimes necessary, of course, but whether you would actually call it a true healing
Right.
is a whole other
Right.
question.
Right. And then Rav Kook says something very interesting. Rav Kook says, "Uchefi hanireh, according to what I see, מקצוע של תשובה זאת תלוי הוא בקשר חזק ביתר חלקי התשובה הרוחנית." Says, from what I understand of tshuva, says Rav Kook, the physical tshuva cannot be divorced from spiritual tshuva. It cannot be done on its own. And therefore Rav Kook says it needs the other parts, the tivit, the natural part, needs the hemunit, the faith part, and hasichlit, the intellectual part. And you should know that in general there are many diseases that come to people not just because of physical ailments or spiritual ailments, because of mental conditions, where a person is put under stress or put into a pressured situation, or they're constantly going through abuse or whatever it is. It's not necessarily being beaten on the head with a bat and then having to get stitches, but there are physical problems that can come to a person from going through such spiritual things. Rav Kook says, therefore, it's not always that a physical ailment will have a physical source, and not always will a physical ailment have a physical remedy. Sometimes all of this must be connected. And from here, Rav Kook will segue the next time we learn together. Rav Kook will segue into the second part of tshuva that's natural. We mentioned tshuva that is natural and physical. But what about the tshuva that is natural and spiritual? On this notion, you might already realize Rav Kook is going to enter the world of mental health and emotional health and the well-being of a person. We once had a student in yeshiva. A very sad story. This guy was a kollel man. He was learning in yeshiva. He was newly observant to Judaism. And after many years of learning in normal yeshivot, he wanted to become a rabbi. He became a rabbi. Became very involved in the Jewish outreach scene in Israel and the Israeli communities. I was married, had 3 kids, and 2 things happened to him simultaneously. He moved neighborhoods, and therefore had to leave our yeshiva, which I could tell you that for most of the yeshivot that I visited and been in, Rav Peretz's yeshiva does not function so well on a practical, routine level, but on a spiritual level, it's one of the healthiest places I've ever been. And compared to some of other yeshivot that I have been to, and I'm not saying it to take away from other yeshivot, but to say that certain things can be solved by being in that surrounding of Rav Peretz and the rabbis that learn with us. Rabbis like all of our mentors and tutors that were in the yeshiva then. This guy had to leave the yeshiva. He had to move to a new community. Part of moving to a new community meant that the religious and lay leadership of the new community persecuted him greatly. They didn't want him there. They didn't want him teaching there. They didn't want him praying there. They didn't want him to be involved there. Simultaneously, he got himself into very big debt with the Israeli underworld. And it must have been around Pesach time, but don't hold me to it, that we got the news that he had jumped out of his apartment balcony and had committed suicide. And it was 3 kids and his wife that he left behind with nothing. And Rav Peretz, for the next month or so, the only thing he could speak about was the importance of keeping a healthy environment and a healthy emotional state and a healthy mental state, and that we underestimate what it means to not be emotionally healthy. He says we have so many situations where people they want to heal their body, they have like high blood pressure, they've got headaches, but they don't stop to think, what about my emotional well-being? I work in a job that's terrible for me. It's a horrendous place to work. How could I keep myself in such a situation for something as menial as money? You need money to live, but you also need an emotional life to live, or else what is it worth? A person can be in a relationship which is abusive, which is damaging, which is hurtful, and a person say, it's not worth what I'm getting in this situation for what I have to give up for it. But we're not taught, we don't teach the world to take care of their emotional well-being and their spiritual well-being. We teach people the only thing that matters is, if your tooth hurts, go to the dentist. There's even another way, which is that many people will feel that to go speak to a rabbi or a psychologist or a therapist or a psychiatrist or any other person that's able to help in these fields, it's just stigma to it, it's something bad, I'm going to be judged.
I'll marry you.
Do you ever think that, something's wrong with me, maybe I shouldn't go to the hospital because they're going to judge me that I'm sick? There's a person that's not well, a person has to know they're not well. There's nothing, and Rav Kook is going to tell us all about this the next time we learn B'lad Hashem, but for right now you should know that there is a part of Teshuvah which affects our physical part. And it could be, I don't have this in tradition from my rabbis, but it could be that in the camp of the Rambam and Rav Kook, a person who truly would master taking care not just of his physical part, not just of his emotional part, but of his spiritual well-being as well, the Torah, the Musar, the ethics that a person has to live with, it could be they would not have a reason to ever pass away. And it could be the reason why so many people in our history who were great lived for so many years. It doesn't answer why there are other people who live for so few years. But it could be. It could be that there is something to this that could, really life doesn't have to end at a certain point. But it's not going to be because they froze our bodies and stored them away, so when they figure out how to do it, that's just to get your money. But it would be to really know how to keep a healthy life, a healthy body, and a healthy spirituality. Because Al Hashem, Rav Kook is going to guide us down that path.
It's something I thought about a lot. And why in the Jewish community, when I came in, why did it look so different from that? And I came up with a number of factors. The first one was, number one, reaction to being societies like the Greeks, which worshipped the body and bodybuilding, and that became the highest ideal.
Very not Jewish to do.
Yeah, that's one.
Still, you should still exercise,
like today,
and these things
CrossFit and that kind of thing, which is also in the end not healthy because it overemphasizes certain aspects. You actually can make your body quite ill that way because they treat some of these people. That's number one. The second is holding too strictly in terms of observance so that the only pleasure you have in your life is food. And so you look forward to just being able to let go when you eat. And so you eat and eat and eat. So that's another factor.
Sure, there was once, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes.
There was once a man who came to Rabbi Nachman of Breslov and said, he's managed to get rid of any of his sexual urges.
Right.
And Rabbi Nachman asked him, how much do you eat? So it's because you've just channeled the urges from here to over there, and you have an unhealthy balance between the two.
Yeah,
you're right, there are many such
Psychology
things.
101.
Right.
You just sublimate, but it comes out somewhere. It's like a water balloon. Press it here, it comes out here. See that all the time.
So we have to. The reason I read is that a person has to have at least 30 minutes a day where they spend time learning something that teaches them about themselves, to introspect, to change. There was a rabbi, an Ashkenazi rabbi, his name was Rabbi Hillel, his last name. He was one of the big giants, about 200 years ago. And he said that every day that he didn't learn books of Musa, of growth, of improvement, he felt like he was one day less Jewish. Something to think about. We really have to take care of ourselves. So I'm speaking to myself as well.